Professor Mark Sutton is an environmental physicist at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in Edinburgh, honorary professor at the University of Edinburgh, and director of INMS, a targeted research approach for improving understanding of the global nitrogen cycle towards the establishment of an international nitrogen management system. As a global expert and driving force to put nitrogen on the agenda, we're happy to welcome him to this chat about our favorite subject, nitrogen.
Thank you.
The EU has launched the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. And I see that one of their main targets, is a reduction of nutrient loss of 50% in agriculture. Is that related to what you just said?
Historically, I can't tell you the detail of that because what were the backroom deals that led to that? What I can tell you is that in 2018 at the Our Ocean Conference in Bali, on behalf of the National Nitrogen Initiative, I launched a campaign where we are calling the world to action to halve nitrogen waste, all sources globally, looking to save $100 billion a year. Now, that halve nitrogen waste campaign, which amounts to a 50% reduction, is more or less is what the Commission, European Commission, are now buying into. So I think we're really happy. Whether or not they listened to us or did it themselves, that's great, but we're working on the same track. I think the big question is, how ambitious do we really need to achieve all of those? Because we're going to need actions in agriculture, in food, fossil fuel, all sorts of measures to do something as ambitious as halving nitrogen waste and indeed, from their perspective, all nutrient losses.
But does this, do you see that the best chance of getting anywhere, of getting to that target, would it be regulations from EU or other places in the world? Or is it the consumer behavior on not throwing away food and farmers who want to recycle more? Or do you have any?
Yeah, well, I think first off, it's clear that this is something we really need to get serious about. If you look at the amount of attention given to carbon and climate, you get a carbon footprint with your breakfast cereal nowadays. Carbon is everywhere in the societal conversation. And by comparison, hardly anybody is yet talking about nitrogen. So first off, we really need to get extremely serious about making change. Then I think the next thing to say is we need a package of activities. In some situations, regulation will be the right approach. In another situation, it may be economic incentives.
Yeah.
What can agriculture do in making fertilizers more efficient or wasting less versus what can citizens do in their food choices? We launched a report a few years ago called Nitrogen on the Table, under our work with the United Nations Economic Europe. That showed that if European citizens were to reduce the amount of meat and dairy they ate by half, that would reduce nitrogen pollution by 40%, and that's without any technical measures. And also bearing in mind that we were eating roughly double the amount of meat that we need to eat for a healthy diet anyway. So there's stuff that citizens can do, but they really need to get serious as well. Whether or not they choose to go down the line of incentives or regulation, let them choose.
Understand. And of course, it's really interesting connections here between the actual food production and the pollution. I've heard some argue that if you are having a food system or a region with purely producing vegetable proteins, it's possibly degrading the soil if you cannot add organic matter. Do you have any ideas on sort of nitrogen from, let's say, livestock manure or biogas digestate versus only ammonium nitrate or urea?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that sounds a bit like one of these arguments of reasons not to do something, and there's many arguments in the world not to do something, and it's always impossible until it's discovered how to get around it. So take, for example, a world without animals. Well, biological fixation with crops, putting in green manures into the soil is another way of adding organic matter. You didn't need animals to do that. But on the other hand, it is fair to say that The question for the world at the moment is not eating no animals, massively reducing in areas of excess. To go down to zero may be difficult for us, but that's not the question we're having. The question we're having is much less. So if you currently think of this world with huge intensive poultry and pig production factories using large amounts of agricultural land to feed the animals to feed us, essentially it makes a long food chain. Food chains have more losses. It's really wasteful. So I would say I'm really pragmatic about these things. There are societal changes we need to make, but we also need to make the best of what we've got. So you mentioned about the manure. The big question is what's happening with all the pig manure and the chicken litter and the cattle excreta in the world. There's much better uses we can make of that stuff.
Excellent. Do you also think that as Farm to Fork strategy says that they have it as a target, does that mean that Europe or European Union is actually going further than the rest of the world, or?
I can't tell you the answer to that. I think the question to the Commissioner is, what do they mean by a target? An aspiration, or do they mean it's a commitment? And I think for the moment they mean an aspiration, but let's see. You'll have to interview them.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
last point. How do you? And this is not related to nitrogen. It's more on a personal side. How do you cope with being restricted from traveling? I believe you are a globetrotter.
That's a very nice question. I would say that I am a great success story from COVID, or put another way, a beneficiary of COVID at the moment, because so far I haven't caught it. But it means that I'm traveling less, and I'm happy about traveling less and doing more Zoom. So it's a great thing. We will obviously have to meet again, with lots more meetings, but for the moment, I'm, let's say, taking the opportunity of less meetings while I can get it.
I understand. Yeah, no, I understand that that's very positive, I would guess. Okay. Okay, Mr. Sutton, thank you very much. I think we have gotten a much better understanding of this as a global problem and something that affects all of us, and that everybody should have it on their mind.
Thanks very much.